Russian officials claim Ukraine has launched American-made missiles into their territory, prompting concerns of a third world war. The Department of Education fails its third audit in a row, adding weight behind Trump's goal to scrap the department. And Savage Freedom's relief operations is playing Santa Claus for North Carolina, while FEMA leaves them out in the cold. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Tuesday, November 19th. Earlier today, Ukraine fired U.S.-made long-range missiles inside Russia for the first time since Washington reportedly lifted a restriction that prevented Ukraine from sending missiles deep into Russia's interior. As Joe Biden nears the end of his presidency, how might this affect the war in Ukraine heading up into the Trump administration? Here to break it all down for us is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief for Blaze News. And Matt, you've been on the phone all day as editor-in-chief and talking with different people and getting the latest in this story. So what kind of retaliation do you expect to see now from Russia?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, look, first off, I don't want to fearmonger. Everyone loves to look at fear porn on the internet and say, oh, we're in the middle of World War III. We've heard that before. It's not a very healthy practice. Nonetheless, this is extremely concerning for a few reasons. So first, let's get the facts of what's happened here. I mean, Russia has just changed its policy in regards to nuclear weapons. And, you know, just to quote a legacy media publication, CNBC, this is a real headline, right, from your mainstream, quote unquote, media. Russia says Ukraine attacked it using U.S. long-range missiles, signals it's ready for a nuclear response. And the reason they're saying that, the provocative headline, is because Russia changed its doctrine to say, look, if anyone attacks us, even with conventional weaponry inside our borders, we reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in response. So they're saber rattling in a big way, but they've been warning of this for a long time. So the main question here is, first off, yeah, what will the response be? But the first question is, why did this happen in the first place? And that's something that Glenn Beck was talking about earlier today, saying this is worthy of, he mentioned the I word, impeachment, right, when it comes to Joe Biden. And the big question is here, we know that the transfer of power is going to occur in America, that Donald Trump is going to become president. We know, therefore, that probably the policy of the United States will change when it comes to supporting the conflict in Ukraine. Trump has said he wants peace. So why in the hell would you have Washington, D.C., quote unquote, making this decision to all of a sudden further antagonize Russia by saying at this late date, when they know that Joe Biden is a lame duck president, so lame that his own party made him get out of the way and not run for office, someone who is demonstrably addled with dementia or is severely senile, supposedly made the decision at this time to fire for the first time American missiles, made missiles into Russia that Russia says, not without reason, Americans must have helped fire the missiles. So they didn't do much damage, right? Apparently, according to the Russians, 6 missiles go in. They're all shot down. One of them, disintegrates and causes a fire that they put out, and there's no casualties. But you have to sit, this is just a provocative act. So why do that now? Why put egg on Putin's face on purpose when he just said, don't do this? And why do it anyway, right? When you know that you're not going to be in charge. And this is where I really get angry. It's not so much worried. It's, what's happening here is the last act of really, the dysfunctional president or president that doesn't exist, the last act of the supposed adults in the room who came into power 4 disastrous years ago and promised that they were experts and they were going to do the right thing. And what's happened? I mean, this isn't even democracy now. We don't even know who's making these decisions. And this is sort of a suicidal recklessness. And they've done nothing but talk recklessly about Trump being Hitler. They've done nothing professional. They've been the opposite of adults. And there's really something I think that's despicable about the self-assured foreign policy expert in this country. Of all the different sectors of government experts who get degrees, foreign policy people dress themselves up in the suits and in the trappings of isms and istics and, oh, we know all this stuff and we have domain knowledge that you don't have. And they're consistently the most evil, dangerous, and really foolish, sector of the entire government complex. Like this, you don't have to be, a rocket science or have gone to Foggy Bottom or Georgetown School of Foreign Affairs, all of which should be burned down at this point after 20 years of failure, to realize this is a provocative act. You're playing with fire, and you're hoping that Putin is an adult, and you're hoping that there's guardrails, right, on maybe both sides, we hope, quietly, to prevent this from going off the track.
Yeah, 62 days now until Donald Trump takes office. And I think that you and we were so excited last week because we knew, right, that volatility will increase. Chaos is what we always talk about. We knew that something would happen. So we wanted to make sure that we enjoyed the good times while they were here. But, at this point, it does look like the deep state going into survival mode. They know Donald Trump during his presidency did not start any new wars. And we're just trying to do whatever they could to make sure that something would happen before Trump assumed office.
Yeah, we also have cables being cut under the ocean today. I mean, there's a lot of shenanigans going on. So, I mean, the simple way to look at it would be, after talking to a lot of people, where both sides are trying to mess with Trump coming into power and set the framework of that. And that's what's so despicable about this act on the American side, because these people are trying to cause chaos and trying to basically, handcuff Trump when it comes to dealing with Russia. And they're doing that in a way where, do I think, nuclear war is likely? No, but they are playing with fire. And that should disturb everyone here. And it should, the Trump administration coming in should recommit to just gutting the State Department. I mean, these people need to go. This entire cast of people who think that they know what they're doing when it comes to American foreign policy, they all need, every last one of them needs to be cast out of office and exiled, because this is not, a game. This is not a game. These are, Ivy League kids who've watched West Wing, growing up, who are LARPing at the highest positions of the U.S. government. And we're just going to, send American missiles over for really no reason. They didn't achieve any strategic objective. This is just saber rattling, right? Without a commander in chief, really, when you know that he's a lame duck. I mean, it doesn't get any more arrogant than this.
He was busy wandering in the Amazon yesterday. He was very, doing very important things, Matthew. He can't be bothered. Whoever is running the deep state now, you know what? They have their hands tied as well. But when we come back, speaking of axing departments, we're going to explain why axing the Department of Education could be the smart thing to do. Next. Well, we are getting closer to the holiday season, and it's time for you to say goodbye to the uncomfortable sheets that you've been sleeping on for years and get yourself Cozy Earth's best-selling bamboo sheet set. Now, I have them, and I love them. I can tell you that they are the best sheets that I've ever owned, and they get softer every single time I wash them. Cozy Earth, it's right there in the name. They want you to turn your personal space into a sanctuary where you can escape the chaos of everything that we've just been talking about. And they make the perfect holiday gift this season. And just in case you're on the fence, Cozy Earth's bedding products come with a 100-night sleep trial. So if you're not completely in love with them, after more than 3 months, you can still return them for a refund. So wrap the ones that you love in luxury with Cozy Earth. Visit cozyearth.com/Jill and use my exclusive 40% off code Jill to give the gift of luxury this holiday season. It's cozyearth.com/Jill. If you get a post-purchase survey, say that you heard about Cozy Earth from Blaze News Tonight. The Department of Education failed its third audit in a row. Education and the Workforce Committee Chairwoman Virginia Fox blasted the department in a statement saying that, quote, instead of focusing energy and time on improving operations and student outcomes at every level, the Education Department in the Biden-Harris era has poured its resources into the student loan schemes and fulfilling every whim of the teachers' unions. Here to break it down for us is Ryan Walters. He's the Oklahoma State Superintendent. So, Ryan, I mean, we're joking here, but oh man, 3 audits in a row that the Department of Education has failed. Are we even surprised at this point in time?
I mean, they're using Common Core math, so I mean, they couldn't get the budget right. No, look, I mean, that agency has been such a disaster, and listening to Democrats act like, oh my goodness, President Trump is going to do away with this agency. President Trump is going to do away with this agency, number one. Number two, we went as a country over 200 years without a federal Department of Education. And, we just so happened during that time to create, the greatest country in the history of the world without a Department of Education. We've had one for 40 years. Every educational statistic has gotten worse. You've watched schools go from teaching patriotism, focusing on the basics, preparing kids for a workforce and a high quality of life, to schools that turn kids to hate their countries, reject traditional values, and can't even do the most basic skills. So it's got to go. And no, I'm absolutely sorry. Long answer to the question. Not surprised at all that they failed their audit.
Okay, so here's a big question. This agency arises, right? And it's really just a glint in the eye. It's a baby, if that. And Ronald Reagan is running, campaigning on the idea that he's going to get rid of it. And Ronald Reagan, 2 terms, puts Bill Bennett in there. A lot of conservatives will remember him. Book of Virtues, right? Smart guy. The Department of Education is still around. And on top of all that, we're privileged to have someone here whose name has been circulating lately when it comes to taking over the Department of Education. So let's imagine that happens. How would you actually get rid of it?
So first you take a blowtorch. But
I've seen the building. It's ugly as sin.
It's got to go. It's got to go. But look, so here's some of the practical steps you can take. And look, President Trump's been crystal clear. The agency's going away and powers returning to the states. And frankly, states should do like what we do in Oklahoma, which is we give as much power to families as possible. Families should be determining the outcome, the education of their children. They should be able to decide school choice, so the school that they attend, but also curriculum. How is money being spent inside of school? All of these accountability and transparency measures start with the parent. But the biggest thing here that you see so often with the Department of Education is you get people that get in there and they want to reform it and they want to bring but we'll bring in our people and the agency has to go. And President Trump has said, when we send it back to the states, what does that mean? Well, that can mean several different things. But number one, someone needs to come in there with an absolute a chainsaw and say, listen, first of all, we need to slash everything that we can immediately, day one. We need to close this thing down. Then go to Congress and go, guess what? We haven't been doing anything. We shut an operation down, and guess what? It didn't have any negative impact on schools whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the schools are saying, hey, thank you. Thank you for not coming in like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did in the middle of last summer and say, hey, states, you're going to put boys and girls bathrooms, boys and girls sports, or we are going to jerk money from you and hold you legally liable for violating Title IX here. Absurd, but that's the kind of threats we see all the time from the Department of Education.
Okay. So that sounds fantastic to me. I'm 100%, let's go. On the other hand, I can see a temptation or maybe even a logical way in which you say, look, let's, on the way out, even as we phase this out, can we use rewarding and punishing powers for good to help set right policy when it comes to the education establishment in this country? And, some people deserve to be punished. They deserve to, can we use the power of the federal government maybe for some things that would be good, like, for instance, civic education or something like that on the way out? Or how do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you absolutely do both. And here's one of the things that President Trump has vowed to do, and that is universal school choice across all 50 states. We've got to get national school choice legislation done. President Trump says, hey, that's at the top of the agenda for education. That means red state, blue state, doesn't matter. You as a parent, God gave your children to you, not to a bureaucrat, not to a government school, to you. You allow... It doesn't matter where you are, blue city, blue state, you get to take your child where you want. It's unbelievable the impact that would make for the country. So that's number one. Number two, we've got to say, we're unapologetic about this. We want patriots in our schools. We don't want you to hate your country. As a matter of fact, we're on the other end of the spectrum. We want you to love your country. We want you to understand what made our country great, and we want you to be a part of that. And then lastly, the thing that we've got to do is this nonsense of allowing the Chinese communists to come in and push curriculum in our schools. We've outlawed that in Oklahoma. We found a school doing that in Oklahoma. I came in, outlawed that in Oklahoma. That's got to be nationwide. You can't allow, I can't believe we got to say this out loud, right? But you can't allow your biggest foreign adversary to come in and literally say, well, we're going to teach your kids that America is the bad guy. We got it wrong. America is the bad guy. We're actually the good guys. We just get a bad rap for it. That can never happen again. So yes, we have to come in for the sake of national security. And frankly, you look at national security, what do you think is going to happen to this civilization if we teach our kids to hate this country and its values? We know what happens because we can study history. We won't be that civilization any longer. So we have to protect the future of America by ensuring that our kids understand American values.
We already let them come in and buy our land and sneak on our military bases. So teaching our kids is just the next thing in line. But I've seen you compare Donald Trump to Winston Churchill. I would love for you to go into that right now.
So I'm a huge Churchill fan, and I'm a huge President Trump fan. And what you see here is, you know, someone, if you go and you read Churchill, there was a time where he stood alone, right? He was warning about a Nazi threat that people said, I mean, it's not that bad, is it? You know, I mean, surely that's not an issue that will come here to Great Britain, right? Like, surely appeasement works, right? Like, it's just, President Trump came out and, you know, sounded the alarm, and you had people that go, oh, you know, we don't like the way he says this, don't like the way that he said that. And he looked at that and said, this is an existential threat to America. If we lose this battle with radical statists that believe that leftist Marxism is where the country has to go, there's no country anymore. He has been unapologetic about it. I mean, I love it. I love even when he does like his Christmas tweets and goes, hey, even you radical Marxists, you know, it's like, he's always reminding you, like, guys, this is real. This is a real threat to the future of the country. He stood alone for an amount of time, was the standard bearer of the future of what this country can be. And then guess what? When the country needed him, Americans turned to him, just like Great Britain turned to Winston Churchill when they needed him, when the threat was on the doorstep. When the threat was on the doorstep in this election, and you saw the left just go completely unhinged, Americans of all backgrounds, across all battleground states, and my state, every single county went for President Trump. You saw this resonating belief that President Trump was the man made for a time such as this. And I see a lot of parallels there with Winston Churchill.
I mean, it's so great to hear you say this. I mean, one of the things that, 3 lifetimes ago when I was in higher education was the fact that would make me so angry is how many people just didn't understand the depth of the problem. And what I appreciate about what we've seen from you, you know, in the last few years is you would directly address the actual depth of the problem, and no one is willing to do that because for so long, right on the right, the idea was, well, we have to, you know, reform this and reform that, and we'll just, and it's like, you don't understand, like this thing has rotted to the core, right? I mean, isn't that how you feel about the Department of Ed at this point? It's like, you can't, there's only so much you can do around the edges.
That's 1,000% right. And I feel like so many times this is where Republicans have gotten things wrong. You know, you win an election, you get in charge, and then what do? You got this, you know, energy. I'm going to go kind of modify this, and I'm going to slightly change this, and everyone goes, so I just went out and fought for you to win this election against this radical left-wing individual, and then you're going to come in here and you're just going to play around the edges? Well, I'm not excited about that. As a matter of fact, when you run for re-election and your party runs for re-election, you know, I'm not as excited as I was. And then you see turnout, and then you see all these issues. What we've seen under President Trump is something that, again, I'm an old basketball coach too, and I like to play offense, okay? I like to be aggressive because you know what? When you're aggressive, good things happen when you've got a good game plan and you move on it. And I see President Trump here, especially in this second term. You want to talk about hitting the ground running. Look at these appointees he's rolling out. I mean, every day I'm going, wow, just when I didn't think I could get more excited about what this next term looks like, here's another one, here's another one. And the game plan that's hitting the ground of no. And again, education obviously is my passion, and to listen to the president just go, no, we're not reforming the Department of Education. It's gone. I mean, it is crystal clear of the vision. And then again, to be such a champion of school choice and go, listen, I got it. Red states, we're doing a great job. Hopefully this happens in Texas, this legislative session. But no, I need it for every kid. We've got to unlock God-given potential across the country. I just think he is absolutely playing offense, and I absolutely love to see it.
Ryan, our last thing before we let you go, we've had you on the show before about bringing Bibles back into schools. I know that you guys have purchased 500 Bibles for Oklahoma public schools. So give us the update. Where does it stand now?
Oh, I got a really great update for you. We're passing them out tomorrow. So actually it is
Perfect.
like we literally have them physically. So I'm really on cloud 9 right now. And look, you know, it's so funny to watch the left just lose it over this, you know, and I've tried to walk them through it. You know, look, you can be offended. You cannot like the Bible. You cannot like Christianity. But listen, you can't rewrite our history. Obviously, the Bible played an incredibly large role in American history. It's the most read book in American history, the most purchased book. And you go through, you just talk about how nonsensical education's been. How in the world have we taught kids about why the Pilgrims came to America when the left wouldn't allow you to mention the Bible or Christianity. Like, it doesn't even make sense. So we're bringing the Bible back. We're very excited to be the first state in the country to bring the Bible back to the classroom. Our kids are going to understand the role that Christianity played in American history, and we are not going to back down on this issue. I believe it is absolutely fundamental that if we're going to be this great country and continue to be this great country, our kids have to understand what made America great in the first place. And it is obvious that the left has hijacked our history. We're going to get it back on track, and it starts with understanding the founding, and the Bible played an incredible role in our nation's history.
Well, it sounds like the Secretary of Education to me. I know it's not going to be around for long, but if you have an endorsement, if you're listening, Donald Trump, Ryan Walters, thanks so much. When we come back, we'll give you the latest on Trump's cabinet picks. Just ahead. As the world teeters on the brink of annihilation, Dietrich Bonhoeffer is swept into the epicenter of a deadly plot to assassinate Hitler in Angel Studios' upcoming film, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin. It comes to theaters November 22nd. You can get showtimes right now at angel.com/Jill. With his faith and fate at stake, Bonhoeffer must choose between upholding his moral convictions or risking it all to save millions of Jews from genocide. And will this shift from preaching peace to plotting murder alter the course of history or cost him everything? Now, I can tell you, I've already watched it. It's so good. I'm going to watch it again, get tickets for all my friends to go see it in theaters. Angel Studios has done such a good job of bringing this story to life. The production value of this movie is so good. They also made Cabrini, which was excellent. So this is a must-see film for the times in which we live. You can see it around this Thanksgiving. Get your tickets today at angel.com/Jill. Kash Patel is the favorite to run Donald Trump's FBI. Now, he hasn't officially been nominated, but even the thought of him running the organization has reportedly sparked backlash within the Bureau. On CNN, former FBI Special Agent Daniel Brunner characterized Patel as dangerous, inexperienced, and revenge-driven. Here to discuss is Darren Beattie. He's the founder and editor of Revolver News. And so, Darren, let's dive right into Brunner's comments, right? Do you think that Kash Patel would go on a quote-unquote revenge tour? And also, with all the legacy media headlines that are out there, isn't that kind of the point?
Well, I think he would be an exceptional choice to lead the FBI. And I don't, revenge tour could be a word to be used. But I'd also like to add that, for someone like that, or for someone like Gates, who I think is essential at the Attorney General's office and must be confirmed, all of these appointments that people are describing as disruptive, yes, they're disruptive, but they're disruptive for a very important and ultimately conservative purpose, and that is to set the stage for the restoration of legitimacy in these institutions. That requires initial disruption. It requires airing out of the crimes that have occurred under the auspices of these institutions. But the ultimate point is not disruption for its own sake. The ultimate point is to set these institutions that have been ravaged, undermined, repurposed for malicious ends, to set that aright and therefore have the country on a course such that people can once again think of their institutions as legitimate.
Aaron, let's talk about how to do that. I mean, it's Kash, it's Gates. Take the DOJ and then the FBI. What needs to happen?
Well, that's a great question. We actually have a piece up now at revolver.news making the case for Gates and saying, the swamp is very broad. And, we know there's a lot of malfeasance within the intelligence community. We've exposed it, we've addressed it, but there's a certain sense in which we expect there to be a bit of dirtiness to the intelligence work. We only hope as citizens, we have the modest hope that at least sometimes that dirty work can be done in furtherance of the American people's interests. That's what we expect as far as our intelligence world. The corruption of the Justice Department, though, I think is in a different category and strikes closer to our very self-conception as Americans. What distinguishes us from other countries, what makes us free, is that we're a nation governed by the rule of law. And that has been severely compromised by Biden-Harris's politically motivated lawfare attacks against Trump and his supporters. And so the epicenter, the precondition of cleaning the swamp, draining the swamp, is to restore integrity, restore legitimacy to the Department of Justice. That's why I've always thought the AG position is the most important position, the precondition for that, and there's no one other than Gates to do it. There's a lot of things that can be done within the DOJ, some interesting ideas. We promoted just some of them for the benefit of the audience. There was a religious liberty task force in the previous administration, the first Trump administration. There can be a free speech organization task force within the DOJ that's sort of the central nerve center, the coordination center for all First Amendment legal cases, legal violations. There can be more sort of Twitter files type examples, and when they expose crimes against the First Amendment, criminal activity, suppressing American speech, that can be the nerve center to deal with that. Another kind of more innovative idea is to kind of further expand the scope of the False Claims Act. People might have heard of this act. It's semi-obscure, but it's often associated with the tax realm and sometimes with the medical realm. In effect, if you rat out somebody for not paying their taxes or committing fraud with respect to taxes, and the government recuperates that money, the whistleblower who has standing to do that can get some of those funds. So it creates a financial incentive to expose fraud against the government. There's no reason, given the purpose and the origin of this law, that it can't be expanded to include, say, whistleblowers who point out that universities that claim to have stopped racial discrimination and receive grant money on the basis of those claims, if they're in fact continuing to racially discriminate through affirmative action practices, we can have the whistleblowers expose that and recuperate the costs from that. So I think that would be tremendously effective in ensuring that the law is followed when it comes to universities. Another case I think is really interesting to use, the FARA. People know that FARA has been weaponized very, very severely against a lot of Trump supporters, sort of, Paul Manafort and things like this. But there are legitimate uses to the FARA law that could be applied to go after, for instance, activists who are working on behalf of certain European governments in order to promote censorship in the United States. And some of those have already been exposed. And in fact, one of the stars of this, the former head of the now defunct Disinformation Governance Board, Nina Yankovic, just recently registered herself as a UK foreign agent, I guess maybe in anticipation of something like this. But there are many others who haven't registered, and I think FARA could be a very useful tool for that. So I can go on and on. I'm just giving some of the examples, but I'll hold off. I could go on for an hour doing this.
Darren, you mentioned, how important Matt Gaetz will be, and that's of course why they're attacking him. New York Times had a smear of Matt Gaetz claiming that a hacker gained access to a computer file of sworn testimony from a woman who said that she had sex with Gaetz back in 2017 when she was only 17 years old. But I want you to listen to Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna on CNN earlier today.
I've been able to get firsthand knowledge from the Department of Justice and FBI once they came out and acquitted Gaetz and actually dropped their investigation into him because they found that all those allegations, as you had just stated, were actually unfounded. I really would appreciate it if networks would cover the fact that this was also tied to a $25 million extortion scheme against Matt Gaetz and his father. And to furthermore, I find it interesting that these actual allegations come out at peculiar timing while he's being nominated to be the Attorney General. To be clear, I do think Matt Gaetz is going to be an incredible Attorney General. I think this baseless smear campaign, frankly, is abhorrent that it's happening to someone like Matt Gaetz, who's done so much to fight the government corruption.
I want to get your thoughts on not only just her comments, but also the timing of this, Darren.
Well, these allegations have always been ridiculous. I mean, the mere idea that the aggressive and politicized Department of Justice that would throw any grandma in prison who dared to set foot in the Capitol for 5 seconds, so they throw them in prison. The idea that they're sitting on genuinely incriminating evidence against Matt Gaetz, who is hated more than anybody by these people than, anyone other than President Trump himself. The idea that they would just decide to not use that information and not indict and not prosecute is absolutely absurd. If there were anything remotely incriminating, it would have been used. It's not like Matt Gaetz became an enemy of the system just when he was appointed Attorney General by Trump. He's been an enemy of the system for many, many years. So the idea that they've been sitting on something and foregoing the opportunity to indict, I think, is ridiculous, and itself, I think, a pretty dispositive case for why there's nothing behind it.
Always interesting who is targeted and all the people who are not. Let's not call it a revenge tour. Let's call it a justice tour. That's what I feel like we're looking at here in the near future, hopefully. One last question for you that we should have some fun with: transparency. I mean, the opportunity right now is for the Trump administration to get to the bottom of a whole lot of things that have been covered up, so the American people wouldn't know what was going on. January 6th, I think, is probably foremost on one of the most foremost things on our minds, on your mind. You've done a lot of work on this. You should speak to that. I'm also curious, though, if there's anything else that's just out there that you really think people aren't talking about that needs to be revealed outside of the January 6th issue.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of our other items, is the transparency tour. Release all the information pertaining to January 6th, pertaining to the Russiagate investigations. And for that matter, we can go all the way back to the Oklahoma City case. There's a lot of dark things there, a lot of very, very disturbing skeletons that are actually in the closet of none other than Merrick Garland, the corrupt and, I would say, criminal in charge of the Department of Justice at the moment. All of these things are critical in terms of that restoration of legitimacy that I'm talking about, but also when airing out these crimes, I think now, the last time we had the opportunity to talk, we talked about a bit of normalization of Trump. And I think the normalization comes from people realizing that they've been lied to about Trump and his movement, and also that the people who've been telling these lies themselves are deeply disgusting criminal people. In fact, even Joe Rogan came out and said, I used to think Obama was good. Now I realize, he's just a liar. And I think by airing out these crimes committed under the auspices of these institutions, that helps to secure the condition for America First electoral victories into the indefinite future, because some of these crimes are so dark, it's just not something the American people are able to get over. And so in addition to us restoring legitimacy, I think it sets the foundation for a long-term success for the America First agenda. And I think if this second term is conducted successfully, which I think it will, especially if these critical appointments are going through, which they must, this is not just a matter of a successful second term. It's a matter of setting the country on course to be a free superpower country up to the end of the century and beyond.
Well, I love that. And Darren, if we had an extra hour or two, we could talk about Oklahoma City bombing for a very long time. I love that you brought that up. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Our next guest will illustrate how many veterans are picking up FEMA slack. Next. FEMA had to face Congress today about what happened or didn't happen in North Carolina. Listen to Representative Garrett Graves ask the FEMA administrator about their aid distribution.
As I understand is that in North Carolina, for example, where I visited, you could have a flood or disaster victim that can get a check for $750. Yet when I go through and I look at the programs and resources that are available to a citizen of a different country that came illegally into the United States, under the FEMA administered program using nonprofits, you could be eligible for housing, for food, for transportation, for healthcare costs, and others. I was able to come, looking at the very documents that these nonprofits were using, I was able to get to a figure in excess of $10,000 for an individual. Let me make note again, that is a citizen of a foreign country. How would I explain to a taxpayer that a taxpayer, a citizen of the United States, is eligible for $750, yet a citizen of a foreign country under your agency is still eligible for assistance of $10,000? $1,000.
Adam Smith is a former Green Beret who spent 17 years conducting global military operations in defense of the United States. But almost 2 months ago, he had to apply his military training to rescue his daughter and her mother and help countless other North Carolinians throughout his group with Savage Freedom's relief operations. So Adam joins us right now. And Adam, I mean, it's good to see you again. I wish it was under better circumstances, though. So what's your reaction when you hear that video and you hear that it's easier for illegals to get money than you and your neighbors?
I go back to the original statement I first made, which is it would be a lie if I was surprised. Watching it real time, firsthand on the ground, we're having conversations with individuals who are regularly denied applying for assistance. So they apply for assistance and it's denied to them. And it's a multitude of different types of assistance. Everything from, a $750 check, which is immediate response assistance, to having FEMA support for grant money coming in to help cover down on damage to the homes. And even that is a limited number. It seems in a lot of ways as if FEMA has shifted its overall how it overall operates from what it was earmarked to do to become sort of this protector of its own funding in order to justify its own existence. And that's a big battle for people on the ground. There's a lot of people that are having conversations about just leaving because of the amount of challenge that they're facing with regards to trying to get FEMA assistance on the ground.
Adam, can you update us about that situation now? I mean, where do things stand now? Because, of course, a lot of Americans, news cycle moves fast. They still care, but it just hasn't been something that's put in front of their faces. What should they know about where things stand?
Well, I think America should know in general that the effort on the ground is not done. We've been at it for 8 weeks up to this point. The disaster in the region it's devastating, and it's still devastating. There's not a lot of reconstruction happening with private residences. There's not a lot of repairs happening with private residences. There are some, but it's not as extensive as one would assume after 8 weeks of a disaster that we've seen. There's going to be a delay on getting locations rezoned by FEMA to dictate whether or not new spots are going to be part of the floodplains or not part of the floodplains. Not to mention the national level conversation about the functionality, the effectiveness, the efficiency, and the actual costly nature of how FEMA functions and operates in general. There's a lot of inefficient effort that's taking place, and it's costing the American taxpayers a lot of dollars. And add to the next problem, which is the second disaster that we're going to face, which is an economic disaster in the region. We've already had the tragedy of the loss of life, and we've had the tragedy of loss of homes and homesteads. Now we're going to have the tragedy of loss of economic stability in the region because capital is not getting reinjected back into the local businesses and local economy as effectively and efficiently as it could be. So it's not over, and we're not out of the water yet.
So at that point, then, if the capital is needed, what more needs to be done? What do you guys need there in Western North Carolina?
Well, look, part of the problem that a lot of the local residents are facing is that if they owned their home, if they had a lien on their home, then they still have that mortgage that they have to pay. They can file for a FEMA-backed SBA loan, and if it gets approved, but now they have 2 bags of debt that they have to carry in order to try and rebuild or repair their home. Our target with the Special Forces Relief Operations, the Savage Freedom's Relief Operations, I just had a phenomenal conversation with a bunch of former Green Berets. I'm sorry, it's still on my mind. The biggest target is to rebuild 1,000 homes. How do we rebuild 1,000 homes as a private entity? Well, the only way we do that is through private effort, private sector effort, moving money from the private sector through organizations on the ground that are dedicating their effort to rebuilding these homes and keeping people in the region. We're going to run into an issue where businesses are going to close because there's not going to be a workforce, and the workforce isn't going to stay because there's not going to be businesses to work at. So it's a bit of a complicated issue. But the first step into fixing that problem is to rebuilding these homes and getting that money back on the ground. The number one thing we need more than anything else is donations and funding. I would love to have a conversation with churches all over the country and get them to sponsor one home rebuild, or have a conversation with other foundations that are of like mind and get them to sponsor 2 or 3 homes to rebuild. If we could do that, we could start rebuilding tomorrow. But with the limited funding that we currently have in our own coffers and the current delay in definitive decision making by county authorities and by federal authorities, it's going to be challenging to start that construction process without potential long-term effects to the homeowners.
So is there a place right now, if people do want to donate, if this video does get out, if people start sharing this, where should they go to help out?
So there's two places to go. The first place to go is savagefreedoms.com. You can go to savagefreedoms.com and you can click the donate page and you can donate there. The second place to go, because we're getting close to Christmas, is santa.savageops.org. If you could go to that, you can also have the opportunity to donate to support the effort that we're putting forward with regards to a toy drive and an Operation Santa Claus, which is going to be,
we know,
Adam.
Be a lot of fun. We know. And you know what? You're not going to get out of this because you put a video out online. Let's go ahead and see Adam playing Santa here.
Hey! Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas from Savage Operations. We want to let you know that we have been working diligently with 10 different community coordinators that have signed up over 200 children to get their wish lists so that we can bring a very Merry Christmas to Western North Carolina. If you want to partake or participate in this, we would love to have you go to santa.savageops.org. And there you can find all of the lists for children all over Western North Carolina that you could buy a gift for and bring a little Christmas cheer. Now, with that being said, Merry Christmas, you filthy animals.
It's so good. I love that. Green Beret actor, the resume just keeps expanding there, Adam.
I got to tell you, it's probably one of the most fun videos we've done so far. It was lighthearted. It was fun. And the number now is 500. So we did the video. We had about 200 children. Now we have 500 children. We're partnering with a multitude of other nonprofits on the ground. And the one thing that we want to be able to do is we want to make certain that we bring Christmas cheer and deliver hope. It's something that's seemingly slowly slipping away because people are having so many problems on the ground figuring out what the next steps are going to be.
Well, Adam, on that note, before we let you go, I know that when Donald Trump came out to visit, which he did, to the region, you gave him a small wooden cross. Could you speak a little bit for our audience about how this entire experience has impacted your faith?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think more people will have found God through this experience and in this region than anywhere else in the United States in the last year or two. I've seen more miracles on the ground in the last 8 weeks than maybe I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I personally have never witnessed this. You asked and it showed up. We needed insulin and it showed up. We needed jackets because there was going to be a cold snap and they showed up. We needed oxygen because all of the oxygen had run out at the county level for a multitude of different agencies. And we asked and it showed up. And a lot of times we didn't even send a text message out or send a request out. We just said it out loud and it was provided for. And it was like God was sitting on our shoulder the entire time, making certain that whatever we had to have showed up right then. And the biggest impact of all is seeing my daughter and her mom healthy and well after having no contact with them for such a long period of time. And it's seeing every person that's left that fob come up and say, thank you for this opportunity. We found God in this place.
Yeah, Adam, it's been a life-changing experience, not only for myself, but for Glenn Beck and Steve Baker, who's been out there. Anybody that has been able to go through and see the work that you and your team have done. You deserve all the credit out there and all the accolades. I know you're not going to take them, but these people have hope because of what you've been able to do. So I hope that everybody can find it in their hearts to go help you guys out.
I sure hope so. Thanks for having us on, and we really appreciate you guys for everything.
Absolutely. Don't go anywhere, though. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show right after this. We keep looking at Trump's picks for his administration in the cabinet, and J.D. Vance, we get news today that he will make the rounds with the GOP senators, taking Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth around. And who knows, Matthew, maybe we had the Secretary of Education and Ryan Walters here. It's not done yet. It's not done, but his name is at least in the running.
Oh, yeah, and it's in the running for real. That's true, and these things swirl. You never know. There's a lot of flurry of activity going on in Mar-a-Lago, and mysterious are the ways in which the final ballots are counted. But he's certainly very much mentioned as a front runner now. And, you know, when you listen to him, that's someone who's saying all the right things. There's things that conservatives want to hear, and, you know, seems to have his heart in the right place.
And Darren Beattie, when he was on the show today, he said Matt Gaetz is essential as Attorney General. I loved that he phrased it that way.
Yeah, Darren is always pushing the envelope, and he's been ahead a lot of things, and I think he understands a lot about how this works. Look, there are other candidates who would be excellent. I think that what everyone loves about Gaetz is he's hated by the man, and they know that he would maniacally chase down the bad guys, and he would do that in a smart way. He would say smart things. He'd explain what he was doing to the public. You know, so there's a real logic there. And I would say with Darren, you know, if you haven't checked out Revolver News, I mean, Revolver, yeah, I guess it's a competitor. I don't really consider any of these places competitors. They're all doing great work. Darren has been pushing the envelope for a while. So if you're not looking at Revolver, you may agree, you may disagree, but he's worth checking out. And when he says Oklahoma City, for instance, don't think old school conspiracy theory, because Darren's been right about a lot of things.
That's right. Well, and I look at it, and we obviously know that change is needed in Washington, D.C., but we get the story today still from Adam Smith in North Carolina, the FEMA hearing there in front of Congress. You see firsthand in North Carolina exactly what needs to happen, the changes that are necessary in an organization like FEMA and everywhere around it.
Boy, Jill, that was an incredible interview. Huh? I mean, that started with his visceral anger and reaction to the crazy system in which we live, in which illegal immigrants are going to receive more benefits than American citizens who are hurting, and ended with him talking about the impact of divine providence throughout this entire horrible process, mercy and love coming out of suffering. That was unbelievable.
And everybody that has gone there, and I said it, you know, with Glenn, with myself, with Steve Baker, with Julio, all of the Blaze people that have been able to go out there and see it firsthand, it is a lasting impact on us. We didn't do anything, right? Like, they were the ones doing the work, but we got to see the firsthand impact that they were having on a community. And I think that it lasts and resonates with us because in times of such distress, such chaos, we all wonder, what would we do in this scenario? And we actually got to see it play out. We now have a blueprint, an example from Adam Smith and the Savage Freedoms Group.
Yeah, I mean, I want to shout out to them because they provided an example of how there are a lot of good people, a lot of good men left in this country who want to do good. And in fact, when they're looking for a place to work that's meaningful. And what's incredible about that is all those guys came out there, banded together, and just started doing things and getting things done. The camp that you all saw Steve was at, that was what Adam and those guys put together. They just went out and did it. And they did it with such a heart. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, so if you feel it in your heart, donate.savageops.org is their website. And I can tell you, they are absolutely deserving of everything that will be coming their way. Thanks so much for watching the show, everybody. We'll break it all down for you again tomorrow night.